Hear me out. The mere idea of Apple entering the XR scene, the spatial computing scene, has been overshadowing what they're actually bringing to the table. Let's talk about it. Currently, XR comes in 3 widely utilized forms. Virtual reality, which is a completely immersive environment which uses screens to alter what you view. Mixed reality, which uses cameras and screens to display a captured image of your real world with artificial alterations. Then lastly, augmented reality, which uses cameras and smart transparent screens to augment digital images over your main vision. Over the past few years, AR and MR have kind of blended together, and so for the sake of this video, I will be using those terms almost interchangeably. In general, VR has been much easier to execute well in comparison to MR. This is because VR is merely a single new medium compared to MR, which uses a combination of the new medium as well as an existing medium. In order for immersive technologies to be done well, they need to satisfyingly suspend the user's disbelief. If the user's brain rejects what it's seeing, then there is no hope for believability. For VR, this isn't all that challenging, as users are used to digital screens displaying fully digital worlds. The biggest issue for VR is actually user virtual body disconnect, the idea that the user's real body is not in the same position or place in space as the virtual one. This leads to nausea, or how it's commonly coined, motion sickness. In general, this can be avoided in quite a few ways and affects everyone in varying levels of discomfort. However, the suspension for disbelief for augmented reality is a much higher hurdle. Intuitively, people's brains know how things are supposed to move and operate in the real world. Humans literally have evolved, like any other animal, to pick up on these patterns within the first few years of life in order to operate successfully in a world grounded by physics. Unfortunately for developers, physics is quite a confusing thing. In order to trick the brain, there is a certain level of fluidity and clarity required, which is really hard to capture with current chips and cameras. Not to mention all the extra cost of it all. It is for that very reason why VR has reached the consumer market long before MR and AR. Unlike the consumer market, however, AR has been just as prevalent in the enterprise space as VR. This is due to the higher baseline buy-in of large companies, as well as the ability to focus on specialized use cases. With that background out of the way, let's talk about why the Apple Vision Pro has received so much hype. Meta, just like Apple is doing now, attempted to release a prosumer headset targeted towards workers and workplace efficiency in the form of the Meta Quest Pro. This was Meta's first step out of the general consumer market, as well as their first push for MR. For all intents and purposes, it kind of flopped. The headset was not well received and had many arguing its purpose, as it felt like an overpriced Quest 3 following the Quest 2. This general distaste for the Quest Pro came from a multitude of factors, from bad branding to bad marketing to bad hardware decisions and even software integration. In my opinion, I believe the worst culprit was the execution. The Quest OS wasn't built for enterprise, and the headset didn't know exactly what it wanted to be. In general, it felt as though the headset itself wasn't quite suited for anything. That leads me to Apple and why there is not only hype, but much deserved promise. Apple is known for their great hardware and intuitive software, something that people don't explicitly recognize them for, but do appreciate nonetheless, is their ability to execute it right. The Vision Pro is going to fit seamlessly into their entire ecosystem, and Vision OS is going to operate flawlessly. The build quality and clarity will reflect the price, and in general, the headset is going to be amazing. But people just aren't ready to adopt XR technology. It's not that they won't buy the Vision Pro, they certainly will. It's not that users won't be happy, because they certainly will be. And it's not that the Vision Pro will sit on shelves and collect dust, because I believe they're going to be used. But just as Apple refused to call their headset a mixed reality headset, users won't be adopting the MR lifestyle. Apple is scared of mixed reality, and rightfully so. Meta has been rolling around in its mud and receiving tremendous amounts of backlash for it. Apple's meticulously crafted brand image cannot afford to be tarnished from this single product, so they decided to create an XR headset without actually creating an XR headset. They instead built a super immersive, ultra-wide monitor that can be placed and moved around anywhere in physical space. Why? Because Apple can't figure out MR either. The ability to have seamless MR with the inside-out tracking just isn't possible with today's technology to stand up to Apple's perceived standards. Before continuing this video, I just wanted to point out that yes, new content has come out from third parties who have already received their Vision Pro. Many of them actually add on to what I'm saying in a way that I don't explicitly detail in this video. However, a majority, if not all of my points still stand in one regard or another. With that being said, let's talk about it. This is a device meant for consumption and work, and it's slated to be released in February. This is not a new product that can be spoiled nor replicated in the time before it is released. Yet there is little to no genuine showcasing of the headset and its capabilities, neither on a person or through the eyes of a person. Let's take a step back and break down each release trailer for the device, of course starting with its announcement. For starters, there was no in-person showcase of the device at the keynote to go alongside the video, which is out of the ordinary for Apple. This could be for a few reasons, but the one most turned to is the fact that it's still either missing features or they don't think having Tim Cook wear it on his head would look good on stage. I, however, don't believe that this was the case, and instead believe that the headset just doesn't logically work on a stage. Either way, the device needs to be experienced by the user in order for them to truly understand it, something Meta realized and uses their stores and pop-ups to execute quite well. The first real red flag that I noticed is the seamless switching between what I would presume is screen recording and then 3D rendered edits. These switches don't come with any disclaimers and are used to hide what I would consider crucial demonstrations of the device workings. The next thing I noticed was the lack of movement while wearing the Vision Pro. You do get to see the person moving with the Vision Pro in the trailer, however, you do not get to see through their eyes what it looks like to move around with the Vision Pro. They never show any screen recording of movement with the Vision Pro. The closest we get is when he is walking up to the chair and there's that brief moment where he looks down and grabs the controller, but that's about it. Some of the most difficult parts about pass-through is movement and getting close to items and all the stuff that you wouldn't really think about when normally looking through your eyeballs. So not showcasing that is a bit of a red flag in my book, especially because pre-orders are live and we haven't gotten any closer look at what it looks like to look through the Vision Pro while moving around in your space. The other thing that these stagnant shots show and echo from my previous point is the fact that this device, the Vision Pro, is more of a media viewer than an actual interactive experience. Moving on to the next red flag, however, I wanted to point out the fact that they hide the wire. They hide it a lot. There is a battery pack that comes with the Vision Pro, as they opted not to put the battery in the headset itself. In classic Apple fashion, they wanted to make all of their promo as seamless and well-crafted as possible. And one of the things required to do that was hiding the battery pack wire. And it seems nitpicky, but it is a valid point to bring up because you have to realize that if you don't have pockets big enough to hold the external battery, then you either have to hold it by hand or lay it down next to you, which would restrict your overall movement as it's not connected to your body. Something that is definitely a deal breaker for many people, especially those who wear female clothing, as it just does not have a lot of pockets or a lot of big pockets for that matter. However, the rest of the announcement video I quite liked. Some of the features they showed off, like the spatial recording, I think will be super cool, and being able to watch videos back in depth in your physical space, I think will be amazing and probably the only reason I would ever want a Vision Pro. Next, I want to talk about the video they released called their guided tour for the Vision Pro. I was incredibly excited to watch this as it went live the same day as pre-orders, meaning I thought this video would show off a heck of a lot more than it did in the initial announcement. However, I was very let down as this was not the case and practically showed the exact same stuff from the original reveal trailer. This video follows along with an Apple employee and an actor, quote unquote, trying the headset for the first time. However, the video was so cut up to the point where even if by some impossible to believe truth that this was the first time the actor was using the headset, they showed zero struggle or learning curve when first touching the device. Which I know they want to show a seamless experience. It would be hard to sell a device by showing someone having issues with it. However, the fact that the person helping him through the experience wasn't even looking at a screen where it was being cast to meant it was so scripted to the point where that there was no room for error in the entire process. Another thing to point out are the continued use of 3D renders alongside real screen captures in order to mislead the viewer into actually seeing what is real and what isn't. A great example of this is the panorama, where he stands up and walks forward, and you can clearly see that that is not a screen recording of what he's seeing because the headset is visible in the shot. But you can see him walk into the panorama, something that won't look actually like that, especially to people viewing them from the outside. This next thing I want to talk about isn't really a red flag. However, it is a moment in the video that I think needs to be talked about and is absolutely hilarious. For as much shit as Meta got for having their metaverse with people without legs, I think this is just as funny on Apple's part, where in the video they had the guy trying the headset for the first time call someone via FaceTime. The person then popped up on a little screen where it showed their shoulders up like you would with any sort of video call. The person on the FaceTime then proceeded to say,
"So
hey,
let's scale the window so I'm life size, and it's gonna feel like I'm in the room with you."
Let me try it.
which I think is a hilarious sentiment that they are trying to push, that a floating shoulder and heads would look like they are there talking to you in person. This added on to the fact that they have the weird facial scan things is just so weird, and I was never a huge fan of what Meta was doing with their metaverse. I think it's just too soon until the renders look better and a little less uncanny valley. I think in general, video call as well as just not being in person is just not gonna work for traditional workspace stuff. Following that scene, there is a scene where the actor first connects his headset to his MacBook. This is by far my favorite feature of the headset, but requires a lot of things to work seamlessly in order for it to work. Firstly, whenever you connect up to your MacBook, the switch has to be done by itself in order to feel nice, something that Horizon Workspace just could not get right. And it has to be quick. That way, whenever I open my MacBook, if I'm looking at it with my Vision Pro, they connect up after initial pairing at the first time of use, and it's just easy and doable. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the keyboard needs to be clear enough to read. I know a lot of people can type without looking at their keyboard, but not being able to actually read your keyboard is going to be a weird experience for a lot of people. So in order for this to sell to the masses, the keyboard needs to be clear enough through the Vision Pro's eyes in order to read. And then lastly, the mouse needs to be adjustable to feel accurate, because if you're thinking about it, you're going from one tiny MacBook screen to an infinitely large space. You want it to be smooth, accurate, and precise to where the sensitivity isn't too high to where moving your trackpad an inch will send your cursor to the moon, but at the same time, you don't want it to take 15 drag lift cycles in order to navigate the much larger screen. And to put it bluntly, Apple didn't show any of this in their video. They skipped right past him actually using it and instead just merely showed a screen recording of him looking at the screen in front of him, nice and big. Which, yes, that is what it is used for, but I would like to see how it would actually be used. All these rapid cuts, while potentially not inherently meant to hide smaller details, ended up doing just that for better, or in my speculative case, for the worst. The last thing I wanted to point out to you all before we go is the experiences, because let's just say the experiences were a lot less than ideal. For starters, all of them were done sitting down. There was no standing experiences and definitely no experiences that required you to move. Additionally, they all had minimal to no actual interaction. The ones that actually did fully utilize the medium and take up the entire space merely required you to sit there and be absorbed in its presence. The one dinosaur experience, which actually had a little bit of interaction with the butterfly landing on his finger, they actually ended up cutting away from. Of course, they did show the butterfly landing on his finger through the screen recording. However, the one part where she's like, now move it closer to your face, they actually cut to an outside shot of him moving his finger closer to his face and not showing the butterfly. I know this is a small thing, but there is a lot that could go wrong with that. The hand tracking, the delay, the butterfly staying on the finger, all of that needs to be done with the inside-out tracking cameras and can be really hard and is something that a lot of hand tracking apps out there just can't seem to get right. So despite being a small thing, I feel like this was a big chance for Apple to show off what the Vision Pro can do in terms of interaction and hand tracking, and they just completely skipped over that. Something I would have liked to see in this video. However, cue them then saying that this was merely the surface of what they had to offer, and then scrolling through the mobile app store, which is just frankly ridiculous that they could only show off the exact same two apps that were already announced in the announcement trailer, and then say that, oh no, we're just scratching the surface. Look, everything you can get on your iPhone, you can get on this $3,500 device, and have it be slightly larger. For the longest time, I have been desperate for Apple to enter the XR market, as I believe that it would bring new life, innovation, and validity to the space. Keep in mind, I do not like Apple products. I think their software is quite restrictive, so I tend to stay clear. Despite my opinions on their software, however, I think they are one of the best hardware companies out there, which is why I was super excited for the Vision Pro. But the more I look into it, the more I get worried that this won't be the saving grace I thought it would be. Instead, it's going to end up scaring people away. Currently, the XR space has a big drought of content. It's just not financially feasible to invest in creating software for a market as small as what XR is in the current moment. Unfortunately, it's going to be even worse for Apple, as they cannot incorporate the already massive library of content out there because their headset isn't Open XR compatible. To add insult to injury, big apps such as Netflix have stated that they won't even add Vision OS support to their app. All in all, I think the Vision Pro may put an Apple Watch taste in people's mouths about XR devices, which is just such a pity. To explain, the Apple Watch is merely an extension of the iPhone. The Vision Pro is an extension of the MacBook/Apple TV in a similar way, which is just a completely underutilization of the idea of spatial computing. In general, this will only add on to the general public's idea that XR isn't anything revolutionary, an idea that is hard to dispute without putting someone into a real XR headset. Selling XR headsets is so incredibly challenging because you cannot just translate the feeling of using a Quest 3 onto a flat screen. No use of mixed reality recording or 360 video or fancy in-person to screen recording cutting can truly get across the feeling of being inside of one of these devices. And what I fear most of all about the Vision Pro is that the first time people get inside an XR device, all they are going to do is play Candy Crush on a big floating bezel-less monitor with a shadow. With that being said, that is just a take from a random child on the internet who has a bit of experience in the XR world, but no actual hands-on evidence of any of this stuff. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. Feel free to voice your own opinions down in the comments below, and if you agree with what I say, or you just think I brought up good points, a like would be greatly appreciated. I do all sorts of content in the XR space, so if you'd like to see more, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody. Bye.